welcome back to the Conifer Wood. This episode I'll be working on testing out the fit and form of Osum's clothes that I've been showing you in the previous videos. Obviously during this process things change a little bit, so I'll be showing what things I've changed over the course of this video. I'll be going through it article by article, so I'll start with the t-shirt and then I'll do the jacket and then the trousers. And I'll also talk a little bit about the shoes that I've been working on as well, although I haven't got quite as far with those as I have with everything else. So to avoid any more rambling, let's get straight into it. Alright, it's really bright in my room, so forgive me if I'm squinting a little bit during this. It's because I can't see. I just showed you the process of making this t-shirt, just putting all the panels together, but what I was a bit worried about was how the edges of it seem to be fraying quite a lot. That might just be to do with the material that I'm using. It is a test cotton, so it's not going to be the final thing. But just so that I'm sure that in the end it won't have that kind of like slightly horrible edge to it, I've gone ahead and tried out a couple of different ways of sort of combating that. The first one I did was this waistline here, and basically what that is a little strip of cotton that's like folded in half and then sewn sort of onto there and then folded back inwards, so you get this nice kind of like seam. And I believe that that is what t-shirts actually do. The only problem with that is that you can see on the edges here is kind of flaring outwards. And while that isn't so bad on the waist and the sleeve edges, the neckline is actually is really apparent because it sort of stands up like a collar, sort of goes around like this. Like the one seam that is like the important one doesn't really work on. It works in a t-shirt this size because it's the size that it is, and it's got a lot of space to kind of even that out a bit. So I'm kind of like scrapping that a little bit. What I tried next was this thing called overlock stitch, which is what you can see here. And basically what that is a way of putting a sort of thread on the top of the edge so that it's sort of protected from fraying anymore. So I think that's what I'm going to go with for the final thing. So yeah, that's the development for the t-shirt going on. It was good. It took me about 2 days, I think, to do all of this, which is so far a lot quicker pace than before, so that's a good sign. So let's start with the jacket. Basically, you can see that the style is quite different to what I had 2 episodes ago. And I'll show you a sort of like reworking of the style of Osum, maybe here. Basically, my concern was that her original design was not quite suited to the sort of climate that Sally's outfit kind of implied. She's got this long coat and like thick heavy boots and a jumper and things like that. So it sort of like assumed that it'd be quite cold. And original Osum's was like this kind of a shirt a bit like this, kind of flowy, and then a t-shirt, and that's more kind of like sunshine. Those two didn't really sort of vibe with each other. So what I've done is reworked Osum's fashion so that the style is still there, but it works better with what Sally's fashion kind of implies. So basically I've made Osum's trousers a bit lower, and I've given her this kind of plaid jacket thing. Obviously this is still white because I'm using the test cotton stuff, but it will have a that sort of pattern there, and I've already got that material over there, so I was sort of working with the materials I already have and trying to work that into her design. So a sort of thing that I ran into with this was that I was originally going to line the entirety of the jacket with this brown felt, but I realised that this felt is pretty stiff, and I was just worried that if I made the whole thing out of it, it would really stiffen up her joints, like it'd be really hard to move her, particularly like this kind of thing. I talked to my flatmate Pago, who is a fashion designer, among other things, and she suggested like just kind of doing the outside edges so you get the impression that it's completely lined inside, but actually it's just you're just sort of faking it a bit, and that's what I did. And then I've got the collar as well, which is the only other felt bit in here. And I'm running into similar problems with this as I was with Sally's overcoat collar. You can see just about on the inside, you can see the sort of frayed edge of this cotton stuff. What I did was just have a flat piece and then sew that directly onto the edge of the cotton jacket. And that means that it's harder to hide that seam. If I can do some like clever camera tricks, then I might be able to hide that. I think I might just leave it like that. And also with that other material, which is a slightly kind of more similar colour to the brown than this white is, it might sort of like hide itself a bit. I've also done some like drop shoulders here, which was quite satisfying. I thought that would be really difficult to do, but actually it turned out quite easy. What I've been thinking with when I've been designing Osum's clothes is like how much trouble I had with doing pockets and tiny things like that with Sally. So I sort of cut out all pockets and buttons and things like that on these, just to make my life a bit simpler. I was pretty pleased with these at the start. I think this cotton has a nice like denim kind of feel to it at this scale. So I originally thought that I could just leave these ones as they are and dye them. Thinking about it more, they're still quite loose. These are basically repurposed from Sally. They're the same pattern pretty much, apart from a bit shorter. And I want that to be a bit tighter around her. I want it to sort of conform to her body a bit more. I did do these belt loops here. I thought those would be worth having because you do actually see this. That there's no sort of like her shirt is tucked in, so it's not covering the top of her trousers like it is with Sally. So that detail at the top there is quite important. The fly, I think I'll just sew up. The shoes as well that I've also been working on. Basically I'm using the cotton because I thought that would be a good like canvas stand-in. The problem with that though, that material, is that it really frays. Another problem that I was having with this cotton, apart from the fact that it frays, is that because I've been super gluing it to the plastic, that glue comes through the weave. It's like darker than the rest of it and it's shiny. So I tried painting over it, which is this test. Like you can still see the texture of the super glue, like the difference between the super glued parts and the unsuper glued parts. So as much as the colour would be sort of flattened and unified, the texture is still different. So you still see that glue in there, which is not really what I want. So I moved on to canvas. I had the same issue because the glue was still coming through. And I was like getting a bit fed up at this point because I was like, oh, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. So I was thinking about like other ways to combat this if the glue is always going to be present. And I thought that it might be a good idea to just stick a sort of band of pleather around it, which worked actually. The sole is thicker now because I made the pleather strip like taller to hide the glue stains. And then the laces as well, I was sort of struggling with these. I tried doing laces with Sally's boots before, with like string and thread and stuff like that, and none of it really looks right. So what I did basically was just like cut really thin strips of black paper. Overall, I think that's okay for a test. I think I'm pretty much ready to start doing the actual things. So yeah, that's it for testing Sally's clothes, I think, for the moment. The next video will be making them properly, doing the proper materials and stuff like that. This video was just sort of testing out patterns and shape and things like that, just to make sure it all works. And this new ensemble as well. I'm pretty sure I've got the t-shirt and the jacket right. The pattern for the trousers does need to be changed. I think it's a fairly easy fix. I say this, it's going to be foreshadowing, I'm sure. And then the shoes I think I've got pretty much down. I just need to actually like make them properly. The other thing that I need to do also is to do her glasses, but the only problem is that they would be in front of her face, which means that it'd be difficult to take her faceplate off. I'm going to make them out of this piano wire stuff. This stuff, which is like 0.8 millimeters thick, I think, something like that. And what I'm going to do is reprint the back part of her head with little holes in sort of where the arms of the glasses are going to be. So I can make the glasses as normal and then sort of slot them into these holes and then take them out when I need to change the face. When I do projects, there's these tiny things like this that have two things that can happen to them. The first is I get way too obsessed with trying to make it right. And then the other option is that I forget about it completely or leave it until the last minute and then think, oh, it's probably not that necessary, and then cut it out. So I'm going to be conscious of not doing either of those things. I'm pretty glad that it didn't take me that long because it shows me that I've sort of learned quite a lot here and have been able to use that knowledge effectively to sort of like make my workflow better. So I think that's going to be all from me from this video. I hope you have a good one until the next one, and I'll see you there.